Hey everybody, my name's Ryan, and here at eTrailer we install, test fit, and review a lot of different parts. That way we could try to answer any questions those of you might have. That's exactly what we're doing here today on our 2014 Buick Enclave. We're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster diode wiring kit. So there's going to be a total of 5 main components needed to flat tow your Buick down the road safely. First one's going to be the base plate. That's going to provide us with that solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook up a tow bar to it. So that tow bar would get connected to the base plate and actually go to the back of your motorhome. That's going to be that physical link that's actually carrying or pulling, rather, your Buick behind your motorhome. The third main component is going to be tow bar wiring, which is this connector here. So this is going to transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Enclave, and that's going to help keep you safe and legal. Another main component is going to be safety cables. So safety cables are going to hook to your base plate here at the front of your Buick and go to the back of your motorhome's hitch, and they're there in the event of a unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything connected together and keep you safe. And last but not least, we're going to have a braking system, and that braking system is going to apply the brakes inside of your SUV whenever you apply the brakes in your motorhome. That's just going to really help bring you to a more predictable stop. So whenever you hit your turn signal in your motorhome, for example, it's going to illuminate your turn signal on the back of your Buick. Not only your left side, but the right side, your tail lights, as well as your brake lights. So you're really going to have all those bases covered, and you're going to be safe and legal whenever you're going down the road. Now, when it comes to tow bar wiring, I am a big fan of the diodes like we have here today for a few different reasons. First one being that once you have it installed, it's going to be super easy to hook up and set up every time you want to flat tow. You more or less just have to plug into the front of your vehicle and plug into the back of your motorhome. Really, that's all there is to it. You're also not going to be able to notice anything. So everything's going to be hidden, and it's going to look completely factory, which is always nice, especially on a vehicle like a Buick. And last but not least, it's not going to damage your car in any way. So I mean that a couple of different ways. Unlike magnetic lighting, you're not going to have to stick anything on your paint or run wires across your vehicle, anything like that. And it's also going to keep your factory wiring protected, and that's because it uses those diodes. So let's say if a short or some type of electrical issue were to occur on your motorhome side, it's not going to affect your Buick's factory wiring. So really would give me some peace of mind knowing that my complicated electronics inside of my Buick are protected and not jeopardized. So whenever you are ready to hook up, like I said, super easy. You're just going to come here to the connector, take your pigtail, plug it in, take the other end of it, and plug it into the motorhome, so it doesn't take you any time at all. Now, this particular kit does not come with a pigtail wire like this or the connector. Not really a big deal. You can pick them up separately, and the reason is a lot of tow bars actually come included with this part as well as the connector. So if that's your case, this is a perfect setup to get because that's already included. If you need these components, not a big deal either. You can just grab them separately, and that's really all there is to it. So at the end of the day, this is a kit you really can't go wrong with. Out of all the tow bar wiring available, it's probably my favorite option. It's just so easy every time you want to hook up or disconnect. Not much to it. You know, you just plug in and call it a day. So compared to some of the other ones, much more simple, and I would say about the same difficulty as far as the installation goes. It's pretty straightforward, actually. I'd say the most time-consuming part is actually running your wiring, but once you have that done, it's relatively simpler. You're just going to have to connect a few terminals to the diodes, and that's really all there is to it. But speaking of the installation, let's go ahead and do that together now. To begin our installation, what we're first going to do is take one end of our bundle of wire, and we're going to wire it up to our plug. So what you're going to want to do is take the rubber cap from your plug. Just slide that on first. You can kind of just push it out of the way for now. And then we're going to split or separate these wires. So you can kind of just barely cut in between them and kind of peel them back maybe a few inches. And once we have them separated, like so, we can strip back the ends of the insulation, maybe about 3/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch or so. And once I have these stripped back, what you're going to want to do is just twist them, get them nice and tight. That'll really help ensure that we get a good solid connection once we plug these into the terminals on the back of our plug. So here's what our plug looks like. If we look on the back of it, we're going to have these terminals here, and what you're going to do is just loosen them up almost all the way. You don't want them to fall out, but you want them to be opened up nice and wide. And so we'll run through what wire goes where. The TM is for our taillights, so our brown wire will go to it. This one here is labeled GD for ground, so our white wire will go there. This one here is labeled LT for left turn, so our yellow wire will go to it. And this one here is labeled RT for right turn, so our green wire will go to that one. So let's go ahead, we'll start with our TM. We'll take the bare end of the wire, set it into the terminal, and then just tighten down that small set screw. You don't have to really crank on it, just make sure it's nice and snug. And so I'll do that same thing to get all of the wires hooked up to the back of our plug here. So I hooked up our wires, and this is how it turned out. Now, our customer is also going to be getting a charge line kit, which that wire will hook up to the center post here. It would be a great time to get that hooked up if you're installing one as well. So I'll go ahead, hook that wire up to the back here. It'll be red, and we'll do it the exact same way. So once I have that done, we can continue on putting our cap on and mounting up our plug. Now what you want to do is put your cap on the plug. Then we can just mount it up to our base plate. Our base plate actually has a bracket already there, so it's nice and convenient. I'm just going to take some self-tapping screws, kind of get these started, and then run them down until they're snug. Now what I went ahead and did is started to route our diode wiring. So I simply just ran it across our base plate. I'm going to zip tie it a couple places along the way. I dropped it down through this opening here to where it comes underneath of our vehicle. So there's where it comes out. You want to do your best to avoid any hot moving parts when you are running this. It is a little tight under here, so if you need to use some extra zip ties to keep everything secured, then that's perfectly fine. Well, with that being said, just continued it along our frame rail. I brought it up through here, ran it on top of this, what looks to be some type of bracket. Continued on towards the back. Just went up and over our filler neck for our fuel tank, where it comes up. Ran it up along our frame rail, over our subframe here, where it comes out right there. Now at that point, what I did is just separate our green wire from our other three. The green wire goes over towards the passenger side. We'll come back to that one in a minute. The other wires continue on right up through here. Then once I got to about this spot, I separated our white wire and stripped it back. And what I'm going to do is put on a ring terminal and actually ground that to the body of our vehicle. So just take our ring terminal and crimp it on to the bare end of that wire. Now you want to save that leftover white wire because we didn't need all of it. We did trim some off, that way it was nice and clean under here. We're going to be reusing that later on. So what we're going to do is take the included self-tapping screw and just secure this ring terminal to the body of our vehicle, and that'll provide us with a good ground. With that done, we'll just let our yellow and brown wire kind of hang here for now, and we can move back to our green wire, and I'll show you how I routed that over to the passenger side. So back to our green wire, what it's going to do is just kind of shoot over here to the passenger side, kind of up along through here, and for the time being we're just going to let it hang right here. It's not going to lay on top of the muffler once it's completely ran where we need it to go, but for the time being we'll leave it here. That way it's easy to get to when we are ready to hook it up. Now here at the rear of the vehicle we need to remove our taillights. That way we can route our wiring up into the pockets where we can get them hooked up. So if you open up your hatch, you're going to see on this edge two little plastic covers here where our taillights are. You can grab I'm using a pick, you can use a flathead screwdriver, something like that though too, and kind of pry those caps off. And that will expose a 7mm bolt inside of there. And take that out. The same thing down here on this bottom one. Then we can just grab our taillight. We're going to kind of maneuver it back and forth gently and pull back towards you, and then it'll release. Then what we can do is disconnect our wiring. You push down on the center of that plug there. You can pull back. With our light free, we can set it off to the side and repeat the same process for the other one. So now what we can do is actually feed our wires into the taillight pocket. So I'm using a pull wire. This is a piece of tubing. You can also use a coat hanger or something like that. You just drop it down through and you're going to tape your wires to it. Now I added that extra length of white wire that we saved from earlier to it because this is going to act more or less as a jumper wire from the driver's side to the passenger side. So now's a great time to do that as well. We're just going to pull this up into the taillight pocket, remove our pull wire here. We can just kind of pull up all of our slack. And then I'm going to cut off some of that extra wire because we don't need this few extra feet to work with here. So with these wires up here in the taillight pocket, what we're going to do is separate these. We're going to strip back all the insulation and we're going to crimp on some spade terminals. So the yellow one here, it's going to receive a blue terminal, so that just slides on, gets crimped down. The brown and white wire is going to be a little bit different. What we're going to do with these is twist these two ends together. And we're going to take the larger yellow connector there. That'll slide over both ends of those wires and get crimped down. Now we can start to splice into our factory wiring. So I went ahead and tested these wires to figure out which one does what. I just use a test light, and it turns out that the purple wire here, that's going to control our taillight signal, and the yellow wire is going to be for our stop and turn. So what you're going to do is cut these about in half. You're going to strip back all 4 ends. So each one you're going to strip back of that insulation. And they're all going to get a blue connector. So you can slide that over and crimp it down. I'm just going to repeat that same process for the other 3. So now that we have all of our ends prepared, we can start to install our diode. So the diode with the single terminal that's labeled out, that's always going to get plugged in to the connector closest to your plug, close to the end of the plug there. I'll do that for both of them. When it comes to these factory wires, pretty straightforward here. You just match up color for color, so this kind of just splices in between. Get those in. And since the purple wire is for our taillight signal, we're going to be plugging in our white and brown wire to the other terminal there. And since the yellow is for our stop and turn, the new yellow wire that we ran is going to get plugged into this one. So that's how it'll look once we have it wired up. So now what we can do with them plugged in is plug our taillight back in. These you do want to try to secure them. In our case, I think our taillight is going to kind of pack everything in there nice and tight. So what I'm going to do is just connect the diodes to each other and peel off a piece of that backing paper and stick them together like that. And we can kind of tuck everything into position and reinstall our taillight. So we can just resecure our light the opposite way that we removed it. Snug down the bolts, and then you can just push those plastic covers back into position as well. So now here underneath the vehicle, I just wanted to show you how I routed my white wire from the driver's side to the passenger side. Real straightforward, just right here along our bumper beam. Kind of through here where it meets up with our green wire. And what I've done is just taped it to our pull wire just like we did the other side. That way when I lift up on this wire, it'll pull these into the taillight pocket where we can hook them up. So I went ahead and hooked up our diodes over here on the passenger side just like we did the driver's side. Just one exception, and that's the color of the wires. So the factory brown wire, that's going to be for our taillight signal. So our new white wire will plug into that diode. The factory green wire will be for our stop and turn. So our new green wire will plug into that diode as well. So I went ahead, stuck our diodes together, and just like the other side, we'll plug it back into our taillight and get everything reinstalled. Now that we have everything hooked up, it's a good idea to test our wiring to make sure that it's functioning properly. So go ahead and try out our taillights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster diode wiring kit on our 2014 Buick Enclave.